As the keyboard hobby gets more mainstream and keycap wait times plummet with a variety of new manufacturers, there is only one logical solution to maintain the same level of exclusivity that was present in the hobby circa 2020, and that is do it yourself, baby. With all the tools now available, keyboard design's arguably easier than ever. Sometimes I just watch Gion streams and pretend like I can understand Korean to learn Fusion 360. And with this comes a larger number of one-off keyboard designs and smaller group buys coming through the door. Not to mention the abundance of weeb-themed back-in echoes coming through to match the weeb-themed keycaps we have in the hobby. So how exactly does one go about this? Why would they even want to do this? Starting off with the obvious, having something that no one else does is pretty damn cool. More so if this is something that you've designed yourself around your specific preferences, color choices, and most importantly, your favorite anime character. Now that we have a lot of designs in the space that are open source, such as the back-in echo, getting into keyboard design is far less daunting and the space for error has been reduced, leading a lot of enthusiasts to branch out from just buying boards to designing them themselves. This is something that some of the first designers have been doing since 2015. This is a hobby that stems from the enthusiasts themselves after all. For those who have no idea how you'd even start going about this, like most things that need to be manufactured, the keyboard will need to be designed using CAD, with software packages like Autodesk Fusion 360 amongst many. This basically will allow you to create a single or multiple 2D drawings that you can convert into 3D, specifying exact cuts, sizes, fancy keyboard curves, and anything else you want in the board that you're designing. Now this works on the X, Y, and Z axis, otherwise, well, it wouldn't be 3D, would it? Now, it's worth me stating that I'm not actually a designer myself. I'm just a nerd on the internet who does too much reading up on things that he's interested in. That being said, I really hope that I can give you a good layman's overview of the process if this is something you're interested in exploring yourself. The use of CAD is obviously not specific to keyboards, and it's used widely across architecture, engineering, and manufacturing. When it comes to keyboard design, like designing anything else, it isn't easy, and there are so many things to consider when designing a board. Things like clearance for PCBs, sizing and metrics for specific screws you're going to use, down to make sure screw holes are cut through the specific plane that you want. Everything down to the method of mounting will need to all be mathematically thought out in order to get a working final product, as opposed to a very expensive paperweight. Projects like the AIO3 plate generator have made this a lot easier right out the gate, but there is still an abundance of things that will need to be meticulously thought out once you have your initial plate sketch in the CAD program that you're using. Now, I've covered how keyboards are actually made in a previous video, looking at the CNC milling process as well as injection molding for plastics. So I'll link that up here for you. But I want to talk about the process itself of getting a keyboard to a manufacturer to be produced. So let's say you have your design. What's the next step? Well, simply put, find a manufacturer, send them your step files, and pay your invoice. Sounds easy, right? The step file will produce what looks to the average eye a glitch in the matrix, but it's really just a standardized file format to share the complex 3D geometries that make up your design. These can then be replicated by the cutting machine at the manufacturer to produce your design. A lot of manufacturers will operate from abroad. I know a number of designers use manufacturers in China who can be easily found through sites like Alibaba. Obviously, you can go more local for production, but whoever you choose, it's important to have good contact with the manufacturer, so they know exactly what to expect from you and you from them. But I'll cover this a little bit later on. We've got to this point where you can generate a plate from a layout you have pre-specified just using copy and paste. Many keyboard designs are now open source, giving you access to play around with them in CAD. So what are the specific downsides to doing this yourself? Why doesn't everyone just design their own keyboards at this point? Let's start with the obvious. Designing is not forgiving. The step files you produce will specify exact cuts, exact angles and sizing. No ifs, no buts. And if you dive in headfirst into designing without doing proper research, practice, and just send off a design to a manufacturer, the consequences of this ignorance may hurt your bank balance more than a standard group buy. Correction, they will hurt your bank balance. Manufacturers won't want to correct your mistakes as this will cost them time. It might also prompt them to not want to take on other keyboard designs in the future. Obviously, this is worst case scenario, but you don't want to be in a position that you're tempting fate so that other designers can't use a specific manufacturer in the future. On the same line, you'll need to find a manufacturer who is happy with minimum order quantities of one. Ordering a prototype from a manufacturer who's expecting a full run of 50 to 100 units later down the line that's never coming is just bad practice. To produce boards, the manufacturers will need to start up their machines, crack open the desired color of anode you've specified just for one board. For this reason, as much as it may seem on the offset that doing this yourself would make it cheaper, prices only tend to drop when you're making a larger order. And for this reason, it may be the case that your one-off board costs a lot more than if you just bit the bullet and dropped $400 on that board on Mech Market you were after. Obviously, software-wise, there are a lot of free options, but the better options in the space like Autodesk do cost a pretty penny, which is definitely another thing to consider if this is the route you'd like to take within the hobby. That was a bit of a negative couple minutes, wasn't it? If this is still of major interest to you and me being a negative Nancy hasn't put you off, first of all, good. Let's talk about how you may wish to approach picking up a new skill in design. As this is such a niche space of design, you can't just hop on over to Skillshare and search for keyboard design to get started. I haven't actually fact checked that, so if you can, might be worth stealing some of them discount codes from creators with more clout than me. All jokes aside, you can learn the basics of keyboard design just by learning the basics of how design in CAD works. The skills of how to actually use the software are very transferable, and will give you a good idea of what's going on to then pick up and play around with your own designs. It's also worth thinking about exactly what you want out of your design. Are you going to use a daughter board? Are you going to design the board around a standard open source PCB or design your own? What thickness will this PCB be? PCBB. What features of boards you really like used? Is there a specific front height you like? A typing angle that's preferable to you? These are all things you can tinker around within the software to really figure out how it all works. You can also grab models of switches, PCBs, and keycaps that people upload onto the web, so you can visually see clearances and anything wrong with your design. I joked about it at the start of the video, but I actually love watching Gion's streams. Even with the language barrier, it's really interesting to see how he approaches design and what you can learn just by watching. I know that AIO3 has toyed with the idea of streaming this year, so it's definitely something to look out for if you're someone who learns better visually. I've tried to focus today on smaller group buys and personal designs and commissions, because when it comes to designing for a larger audience and putting a board out to the public, there's a whole other things you've got to take into account. Not to mention a whole load of other things to consider before you even put up that IC on Geek Hack. Designing for a small group of friends or just yourself opens up so many more doors when it comes to what you can include, as the window of interest can be so much smaller. There are a plethora of cool anime themed boards now, and even boards that push the boundaries of what a keyboard can even be. I would love to put Yu-Gi-Oh cards in this thing, god damn. At the end of the day, keyboard design isn't easy. There's a reason people charge a lot of money for commissioned keyboard designs. But that being said, if it's something you want to explore, it's very rewarding, and the end result is something that you have designed and creatively directed into existence in a hobby that you really like. And I think that as a concept is pretty damn cool. We have access to all these materials now that make this a hell of a lot easier than it once was, and what's the worst thing that can happen? Nothing can go inherently wrong by giving it a try, eh? The caveat to this is make sure you take your time, exercise all due diligence when it comes to practicing and learning, and communicate well with potential manufacturers about what their expectations should be, making sure they're happy to produce only a one-off board or a small run if it's a group buy for you and your friends. Now, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a like down below as it really helps me out. What are your thoughts on keyboard design? Something you've considered doing? Something you've even already started doing? Let me know. Socials are all linked down below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you nerds in the next one. Peace.